Tell me about Ballymacelligott.
Ballymacelligott is the biggest parish in Ireland. A great parish.
On the maps, is it?
Everywhere, yeah, on the maps, yeah. Lots of great people came from there. This place here, my grandfather bought, and his brother bought this place in 1904. That was his brother's house there. He was killed at Ballycapty. He drove his horse and car coming up from Tralee. One wheel went in. There was no bridge, no parapet on the side of the bridge. One wheel went in, and he fell in, and he was drowned. And then there was 80 acres here in total. They had 40 acres each, and my grandfather lived in the house inside, which is now knocked.
We'll walk in.
Which is being rebuilt. And
so where did they come from first, before they came here?
They were evicted from a farm over in the middle of the parish. And
what was the name of that place?
It was Griffin's place in Kerry. And the Griffins are in there now.
Why were they not able to pay the rent, or what happened?
I don't know. I know they were evicted. And three of them went to Knocknagoshtal, out in Brusna, Knocknagoshtal area, and Abbeyfield. Leen's Hotel and Abbeyfield are the same Leens. And three of them went to Shacksmount. And they came back in here. Then there's some of them still in Shacksmount. And my grandfather and his brother, that's how they bought this place then. 1904 for £990.
Yeah. So they would have been a family get together and save up their money and buy between them.
Well, what they always did, all the old crowd, my grandfather's brothers now and all that, they always pooled their money, and they bought a farm for one fella, and then they bought a farm for the other fella, and so on, and they all wound up with farms.
Is that sort of the metal kind of system, is it? Or?
It is, something like that.
Yeah. And like the house that we're looking at here, this would have just been half of the house, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was
his brother's house.
Leen's grandfather.
Yeah.
So we're walking in here now. This is where the old house was, where it's knocked now. They're rebuilding it. Yeah. So your grandfather would have lived in this part of the house.
There was a long house.
What was his name?
Leen.
So that was Ger and Ellen, is it?
Yeah, Ellen O'Sullivan, yeah.
Ellen O'Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah. And she was related to John L. Sullivan.
John L. Sullivan, who's he?
Boxer.
The world champion boxer.
Yeah.
Bare knuckle boxing champion of the world, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And he went to America.
His father came from Aberdeen. His father was born in Aberdeen, and he went to America.
Okay.
John L. Sullivan's father went to America. But she was one of them.
So direct descendant of world champion boxers. What's that behind you there?
That's the stall. Used to be the cowhouse.
So that was where Jerry's stall used to be.
The stalls were there, and the horses were kept inside here, and there was a small place down the thing below then where there was pigs kept.
And there was fine thick walls on that building.
There was the old stone and mortar walls. The old houses were built with stone and mortar that were 18 inches thick.
And were you saying that building was actually part of Pete's kind of stables?
There was an estate over here, Pete's, which was an old landlord. This was part of it.
So this is part of his settlement, yeah.
But and they always took the best land in the county. And when the rates were on the land, this place here was the highest rated land in the county.
Oh, was it?
It was.
So like they'd have a value on different areas.
They put a valuation on land on how good it was.
Okay, based on what?
Based on the depth of the surface in it.
So would they do kind of like soil analysis?
They dig holes in it.
Okay. And there's limestone on the land here, isn't there?
There's a quarry below here. My father quarried it with his father. Down the road here.
Yeah.
Part of this place.
And where is that? Just down
below the road. And I have...
so he would have taken out limestone?
He did and sorted it to the council.
Oh, did he?
He did, yeah.
And how would he have taken it out? Would they blow it out or what?
Just to blast it. Oh, the holes and blasted out.
Yeah.
Just to blast it out.
There's a horse going past there now. I can hear it. It wouldn't have, just as we're talking about the stables.
Yeah.
And So like they'd blast out the stone and then sell it.
Blast out the stone and break it up and crush it. And that's just
All by hand.
Yeah, and
practically.
there's just sell it to the council for patching the roads and things.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kind of caves and stuff around here, isn't there?
There is
In the lands.
There's a cave up the road here, about a mile up the road here, which the archaeologists discovered there about 20 years ago, and it was they found there's 23. There remains of 23 people inside in the cave.
What was that called again?
Cloghermore Cave.
Cloghermore. You were in it, were you?
I was in it, yeah. And there's a beautiful.
So what did they find in there?
They found 23 bodies.
And was it a ceremonial type thing or just actual burial?
There was an interest in it was like a high rock. There was an interest in the bottom and an interest in the top. And it's supposed to block one side, whoever was after them, whatever, and they were killed inside there.
Oh.
There was an antler found inside one of the bodies. The tip of an antler was used as a weapon.
Oh, right. So they actually kind of were killed. Somebody was killed. And was there any gold or anything found?
I don't know what was found. They found a few axes and things like that. The museum has them in Tralee.
Yeah. And like we're just standing here now at the top of the field, and this is all yours.
That's the ring fort below. Look, you can see where the bushes are.
Yeah.
That's the ring fort.
And isn't that the line of hawthorns there? That was always the sacred tree, the white thorn tree, and there was a fairy fort, and that's the whole line of white thorn trees. And don't ever knock them, whoever's here. Yeah, but like, isn't that line of trees sort of lining up with the cave up the road? And is it Cloghermore, you said?
Yeah, it probably is pointing that way.
Because I looked at the map one time, I thought it was.
There might be, yeah.
Like as if it was sort of a ley line or something.
I know there's a ley line, I know not, but that's the way it was. But
and like, you know, you were telling me about that ring fort. Like, what do you know about it? Was there ever anything found there, or was there any stories about anything?
No, I never had too many stories about it, but I found a couple of stones there, small stones. One was a tool, an axe. It was like a thing that would fit into your hand for crushing cotton, and another circular one. There, I found that one time because I put the stuff, all the acid falling down, sank down around the fort, and I built it up there about 10 years ago with a digger.
Was they'd say you should never touch them, but what do you think? Were you just sort of fixing it, or?
I was fixing it up.
Okay.
I would never knock it. I was saving it actually. I built it up. I didn't go. I didn't go destroying it.
And Jerry was living in that's my mother's house there behind you. But Jerry was living there. But did he ever have any stories? Because he farmed this place. Did he ever have any stories about any folklore or finding anything?
He didn't say that. Not that I know of anyway, like, you know.
Yeah.
There was 12 children raised here. 12
children, yeah.
Yeah. That was Jerry built that house in about 40 years ago.
And he would have farmed all this himself.
All this.
What would he have had? Cattle or?
He had cattle, cows, and he milked cows and all that thing. And then he planted the wood with myself, the wood below the 17,000 ash oak and sycamore trees below there.
That land was sort of a bit wet, was it, down below the ring fort?
There, all right, but it was a great field, but probably shouldn't have been planted like.
But you have planted hardwood down there, haven't you?
I've planted hardwood, yeah. Ash oak and sycamore. There's 17,000 of them there, and they were planted in 1993, so they're about 30 years old.
Yeah. Well, Ballymac is a very strong Republican county, isn't it? Like, wasn't there a story about the first barracks in Ballymac?
The first barracks that was burned in Ireland after 1960 was attacked and burned over and got the Clay, just outside the parish. And
because there was a claim it was somewhere else, wasn't it?
Everybody, when all the Republicans claimed it was Solihull Beg in Tipperary, the first barracks was attacked. It wasn't. It was got the Clay. It was attacked 6 months before, and there was two of them killed there. Two there in killed there.
And who were they?
Leen and Brown.
Leen and Brown.
Yeah.
And
Tom Brown, the Bishop of the Bar, his uncle, and one of the ladies back the road here, and they were killed there, two of them.
What happened there?
They were surprised there was a what do you call it, a sentry came out and they were walking on the roads, and they came back while they were at the thing. While
What's
they
the
were
sentry?
actually attacking the sentry were two people, two RSM, and they came back and shot him. And the two of them that shot him then was Boyle and Fallon, were their names. There was an inquest being held in Tralee, and they had to turn up for the inquest, and they were shot. There was one of them shot inside by John Cronin and Tom Mack, inside in the streets of Tralee, when they came into the court for that inquest. And one of them, the other fellow, then went off to America, and he was shot in America.
The RIC for that.
Yeah, he was shot coming out of a barber shop in America.
So the sea didn't exactly protect him.
No, by Dennis Cameron's uncle. Dennis Cameron was his name. He was an area man, and we made a stone for his nephew over in Tralee not too long ago, and it was his followed him to American shot.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
You did a stone there recently, didn't you?
I did. Forgot the clear.
Yeah.
I did. My son Tim Horrigan and Jackie Crow, three of us alone. We got together and just got permission from the council, the whole lot, to take away the front, and all the council.
But like it was on the site of where the barracks was.
That was where the barracks was.
What's left there now? It's
There's
just
nothing there. The remain, the foundations there all the time, the barracks. But there's a stone mark, and there's a big monument there marking it now.
So they never actually rebuilt the barracks there?
No. They had to get out of there then.
But like that would have probably sparked a lot of trouble around the area after that, wouldn't it?
Well,
because
Ballymac was always a great Republican spot down through the years as well. But like in the War of Independence, there was no parish like it. There was you had two TDs elected out of the parish after Johnny Connor and Tom McAllister down the road here, and so that speaks for itself really.
And they were Republican.
They were IRA men, yeah.
Yeah, they were active IRA men, weren't
They were
they?
active IRA men, yeah. Now, Mac was only lived just below here.
McAllister, was it?
Yeah, McAllister, yeah. And Johnny Connor was living behind you where we are.
Yeah.
Behind your home.
Johnny Connor was killed, was he?
Johnny Connor was killed. He was elected as TD, and he was coming down from Dublin.
So would they have been
Sunday
elected
evening.
for Sinn Féin then, is it?
Huh?
Is it Sinn Féin they were elected for, or who?
No, he was a Clan of Public there.
Clan of Public to.
Because, what's his name? De Valera took over republicanism after the treaty. De Valera was supposed to be the Republican, sure he turned that into Fianna Fáil. And sure, no, the way they wouldn't have nothing to do with him. So they set up, Sean McBride set up another party then, Clan of Public there, and Johnny Connor was elected for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Sean McBride coming down here when Johnny was killed. He was killed on a Sunday evening. He was a great friend of my father's mother's.
Was he shot?
No, killed in a car accident
Was
outside
he?
Headley's Bridge, yeah. And he was, his daughter then stood for election and got elected.
Johnny Connors?
Johnny Connor's daughter, Kathleen Connor.
Mm-hmm.
And, Anne that's behind the house now, Anne Fitzgerald. She married Amy Fitzgerald after, and she only got elected once. She didn't stand anymore, that she wasn't interested in, But they were great men. They were great people. But I mean, the amount of people that the Black and Tan shot around Ballymac is unreal.
And it even actually came into our own family. And who
It did. There was two of them. John Leen was shot Christmas night, 1922.
Christmas night.
21, over in the middle of Ballymac by a fellow called the Major McKenna, himself from Mossy Radio. There was another one.
And what happened there?
They were meeting the two girlfriends. Actually, Tom Mack's sister was going with John Leen at the time, and they walked in the door over Christmas night and shot the two of them.
Of the house?
Yeah.
Burst in the door?
Yeah,
Wasn't there something about it like that they were, they thought they'd be safe that night, so they went down and met him, and it was the kind of a thing.
I thought, no, but they shot him anyway.
No, but it was kind of a thing where they were kind of on the run, weren't they?
They were on the run, yeah.
And they thought no one's going to go out Christmas night.
That's right.
So
yeah.
they kind of said, look, we'll take a chance with it.
That, yeah. But anyway, they were shot there, and it was actually my grandfather that took up the bodies, himself and his wife, took the bodies up to Clough Church.
Did he have a car?
Horse and car.
Horse and car, yeah. And of course no phones or anything in those days.
Phones or nothing. And the fellow that shot them then was Major McKinnon. McKinnon, yeah, a Scottish fella, a black and tan. And he was shot inside in the race course after, and his last words were, and he died in Ballymac.
They didn't get to though, did they?
There burned 13 houses in Ballymac that night.
Did they?
They did.
They burned 13 houses after the killing of him?
Yeah, they did.
The black and tans?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
But they did, yeah. And but there were always, this parish was a great parish, like. There was a battle in Ballymac in the middle of the day one day. The Battle of Ballymac they called it, over at Ballydewire. I don't know how many people were shot. Around the parish. Then you see the little white crosses.
Yeah.
And then the Civil War came into the parish, and you had the worst atrocities of the Civil War were committed behind in Ballymacelligott, where 9 IRA prisoners were taken out of the jail in Tralee, tied around the block behind the Ballymacelligott, and blown to bits. 8 of them, 1 fella escaped, and 8 of them were killed. And the big monument behind the Ballymacelligott is there now. You can film that as well when you're going back. And the same night they done three of them over in Countess Bridge in Killarney.
And who did that?
The Free State people.
Yeah.
Now Michael Collins' crowd, like.
So that'd be Fianna Fáil, is it?
No, Fine Gael.
Fine Gael.
Mainly.
Yeah.
But there'd be Michael Collins' crowd then. They were the great people.
Oh yeah, so Michael Collins came back and he had to set up the Free State Army, wasn't it?
He did, yeah.
So it was brother on brother, like.
Well, De Valera said he'd make Brother Wade and Brother's blood.
Brother's Wade and Brother's blood.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
No problem to him, like.
Yeah. But so there's a very strong history in this parish of struggle anyway, that's for sure, you know.
And like it's still actually, there's still kind of a strong Republican kind of sentiment in this area as well, isn't it?
Well, there is, yeah.
Like even for the John Leen's 100th anniversary there, last year.
There was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
There was, yeah.
And that was kind of like, you know,
and
a nice thing to see. All the families still came out.
Yes, they all came out, yeah. And
so time isn't really kind of shifting the sentiment at all here, is it?
It doesn't, no. The other one, the Leens then was outside in Gale, outside Ballybunnan. He was, the Tans had him for a week in the barracks. He was an IRA man. They had him for a week in the barracks and died a week after coming out. He's buried in the Republican plot outside in Gale and Ballybunnan. Outside Ballybunnan. He was from Lizzelton. There's family Leens out there, the same Leens as ourselves.
And how do you think this kind of Republican, you know, ideology would have kind of influenced you?
Well, my father was a Republican all his life. All of the people of Ballymac, the people that ran the whole Republican movement of Ballymac, but the IRB, old John Buttons, he was one of them. They were the people that...
John Burns was actually...
IRB.
But he was a landlord, was he?
He wasn't.
He had a big house though, didn't he?
He lived in a house up here. But the house belonged to actually the same family as Pete's over here.
Oh yeah.
He was a crane inventor. But like they were
Do you think like that all of the history of Ballymac would have actually been a strong kind of factor in influencing you to become a Sinn Féin councillor then? And a Republican?
I would say so, yeah. Probably,
like it was sort of always in the kind of
it's always in
ether, like, wasn't it?
It's that green bone is in you to come out in the story, you know.
Yeah.
It always does.
How long were you councillor?
18 years.
So you were in Kerry County Council?
And for the other council.
For 18 years. Yeah. And what way do you see the country going with regards all of the everything that we fought for and died for? And do you think it's worth it? Do you think that the country that they fought for is going to come about?
I think if the people that fought and died knew the way the country was going to turn out, I don't think they'd do it again. I don't think they'd do it because what actually turned out was Ireland was turned into a conservative regime between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Catholic Church, and anybody, if you didn't have property or if you didn't have wealth of some kind, there was nothing taught to you. And that has been the history of this country. And it is conservative.
So it was the small fellas that fought and died,
yes.
And
yes.
they sort of...
And the other fellas, the rich people, reaped the reward.
They weren't the ones fighting.
They weren't. Most of them weren't.
So it's the age-old thing about like the fellas who can't afford it go to war, and the fellas who can stay at home and tell the other fellas what to do.
That's it, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
and like, do you think like that?
We've a very dirty history. Like, I mean, even what was done with in Ballymacelligott, and wasn't even done by the Black and Tans. That was done by ourselves.
And looking at like the way we've gone very European now, what do you think about that?
Well, probably in some ways I probably would have been against it in the start, but I wouldn't, not anymore. I think that you have to expand, but I mean, you have to expand, but at the same time all your own people have to be looked after, and many of them aren't.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the war in Ukraine now, and even like with everything that's happening there, and the way Prince Charles was here talking about how bad it was, you know, what's going on in Ukraine.
That's hypocrisy. What they did in Northern Ireland, what they did in this country was no worse or no better. They were responsible for 2 famines in this country. And I mean, all you have to do in this country is go around into every old churchyard in the country. There's a burning church there after them. Mm-hmm. All the best land of the country was taken. We're walking on top of at the moment, landlord's land.
Landlord's land, which was land that was taken from someone originally.
Taken from ordinary Irish people. And it was them. They always took the best land and send all the native people up into the mountains. That's what they do with them. And
they still own land here, don't they?
Oh,
the royal family.
The British have.
Doesn't he have? Wasn't Prince Charles going to different farms that they have and houses around the place?
No, he would not. I don't think they have any. But what they had was they owned the ground rent. That you'd have to pay ground rent to English landlords who never set foot in the country. I'm not that sure whether that's still in vogue or not, but I think it was up to not too long ago anyway, that's for sure.
Like there was one story about Ballymacelligott Castle, wasn't there? With the rent of the rows having to be paid.
That was granted to Leen because he fought with the British. That was granted to him and the rent was 1 red rose on one day of the year. That was all the rent he paid.
So they'd get a rose sent over to the Queen, wasn't it?
He took all the land around Ballymacelligott, which was all the best land back there, and evicted all the people up into the mountains again. So and
do you think that cycle of eviction and oppression is finished in Ireland, or do you think it's just changed to a different sort of
what we have now
system?
What we have now in this parish is the development of 3 or 4 huge farmers, and they're the new landlords, and they might even be worse than the British. These are Irish farmers, and some of them are not that great, and all they want really is take over more of it. They can.
And what do you think of NAMA in the similar context?
NAMA.
And what do you think about the vulture funds buying up houses and evicting people and selling it for half nothing?
They shouldn't be allowed to do it. The government shouldn't have allowed them. Why should they?
Do you think it's the same thing, just a different guise?
Yeah, same thing. They're the new landlords.
Yeah.
They're the new landlords.
Because they have the big pockets that they can kind of dig into, and bulk buy and
the banks had a policy. Yet the banks were bailed out by the Irish taxpayer. All the Irish taxpayers bailed them out because they were all up to their neck in debt. And then the banks had this policy of no matter if a person wasn't paying the thing, get them out of the house anyway.
And they could have been selling houses, like you'd hear of where they're selling houses for 40,000, 50,000.
Yes,
and they'd throw people out of their houses.
Yeah.
And they could have possibly got that money together.
They could, yeah.
But they wouldn't want it from them, they'd want it from someone else.
That's right, yeah. And they took lower offers from other people.
And do you think that there's bad luck in that?
There is.
Have you ever heard any stories about that kind of thing?
There's no look in grabbing. And what Boycott started was, there was a fellow above in Galway or Mayo, I think his name was Boycott, and anybody when or what's his name was Davitt, Michael Davitt, was trying to stop all the evictions and all that. He said that nobody should buy any piece of land that's for sale that had been grabbed, and what they did, then they boycotted them, and then that meant they didn't deal with them. They did nothing with them in any shape or form of life, so they boycotted them.
So
and
what they got was no good to them.
It was no good to them. And that happened behind the Ballymacelligott.
Do you think they should bring that back?
Well,
like if a house is bought, because someone can't pay for it and sold off under similar conditions.
It should be, yeah. And I mean, it was
like
done,
it should be highlighted, shouldn't it?
It was done above in Leitrim.
Was it?
Well, it was, yeah. But the banks were closing a house and a couple of old people, and all the neighbours around came along and boycotted it.
Didn't you? Weren't you involved in something with what's that fella, or the story you were saying about, like the thing where the banks took your man's land?
There was a man down here in the parish, and he had at one stage in his life he lent £7,000 to his cousin to do something. His cousin was a bit of a gangster, and his cousin never paid it back. And anyway, he'd borrowed the money from the bank to lend to your man. And then anyway, it went on for years, and he had bad health as well. He'd cancer actually. And anyway, long story short, anyway, the banks had totted up with interest up to 40,000. And he came into me one
So
Monday
charging
morning.
whatever interest they want.
Yes. Well, he came
Didn't
into
probably
me
even know what it
Monday
was.
Morning, and he said the banks are going to sell my farm.
And how much was the farm worth?
Wednesday. 1 second now. And he said he was able to sell 6 acres, he'd get 18,000 for that, and he was going to give them that, and they wouldn't take it. And I went down to the bank with him anyway, and gave 2 hours with the bank manager, Tralee, and he was only laughing at us. So that was Monday. So the auction was on Wednesday. So I said to Denny Connor was his name. I said to Denny, I'm going to pick at the auction. You will have to come with me. I will. He said, yeah. And when the auction started Wednesday, 2 of us picketed with 2 placards. Saying up on the placards was eviction, not auction.
Eviction, not auction.
Yeah. All the people came in one side of the Ballymacelligott Hotel and out the other side, and there was no auction.
So it worked. So what happened then? Did he accept the 18?
Denny died 6 months after, 7 weeks after. And 12 months after, 18 months after, his sister, whom he left the place to, came in to me and she said the bank are back again after the land. So I rang this fellow in Cork dealing with the bank, and I haggled away with him anyway, and I had him down to 24,000, and the woman was sitting across the table from me, he didn't know that. And so I said to him, no, I have to put this to this woman and I'll come back to you tomorrow. So anyway, I said to her, she wanted to pay it because she could still sell the piece of land, 18, and she had much too more about. Anyway, the following day I said, we'll knock up the more thousand of them. And I got him down to 22,000. So this was of a Wednesday, and he says, if that, his own was, this fellow in the bank, if that fucking money isn't inside in that fucking bank by Friday, this fucking deal is off. There his words. And she paid the money and finished it.
Well,
but there was never again a farm put for sale by the bank in County Kerry.
After that?
No. And there was an eviction in Tralee, at which this young couple that were living inside in this flat in Tralee, her flat went to fire, and anyway they squatted in the council flat inside in front of Walter Lyons's, right? So she told me she was going to squat there. I said, look, they will throw you out, but I said it might help you get a house anyway. But anyway, I squatted there for 6 months, and then one morning I got a phone call at about 10 to 8 that the guards and the bailiffs were throwing them out. So I went in anyway, and the woman, and she had 2 small kids and her boyfriend, and she was going down the room packing up her stuff, and I went down the room to her, and she was crying down the room, you know, and the whole place was full. There was 100 people, I said, or maybe 2, and anyway, I said to her, I was thinking, I said, will you do what I wanted to do? I will. She said, yeah. I said, jump into the bed. I'm going to say you're sick, right? And I says, don't open your mouth to nobody, just keep your, and stop the crying, I says, and just stay inside in the bed, don't come out. So she did, jumped into the bed and I went out and there was 2 guards there and 2 bailiffs, and I said to the guards, let's come over here and talk to you in front of the bailiffs. I said, this woman is sick now, I'm getting a doctor for her, he can't touch her. The guard said, then nobody touched her. Then nobody touched her. Right, and I rang Arthur Spring, the late Arthur Spring, and he came up, went down the room and he went and checked her, and he came up out the room and he says, I don't know, he says, what's wrong with her? But he says, I have prescribed a month's bed rest for her.
A month's bed rest. Where do you see the future of this
Eviction
of
finished.
Ballymac and
Eviction over.
Yeah. What can you visualise for the future of this area? How would you like to see it?
Ballymac?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see it remain the same. Remain the way it is. I wouldn't like to see any more landlords here. And the people that belong to the land be back to their lands, wherever they are. The people of the parish, like, that's what should be done here.
Do you ever look at the old maps of this area and see all the ring forts kind of linking up?
Oh yeah, plenty of them there. There's ring fort below there.
Is there a name on the ring forts actually?
No, there's no name.
And what do you think they were for?
I'd say they were basically protection for the people that lived around here at the time. Like, I mean, they're going back 3,000 or 4,000 years, right? You know.
And you always say like that there's that they kind of follow families, don't they?
They do. There was another one above where we lived.
In your dad's land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so
and did you ever find anything up there?
I did. I found stones there, circular stones. I have them.
The same kind of thing as what you found here?
No, different ones. These were kind of, they'd be for making fires.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, I found a couple of them there. We used to set spuds in one up there, like at home. Always set spuds there.
And did you ever hear any stories about people like breaking them down and having bad luck?
Oh yeah, that was Dan Pierce. Dan Pierce, Pat Pierce's grandfather now, he knocked one. And he levelled it out. He couldn't give him enough land. And anyway, one day he was down and someone cut down to him. He wouldn't come up to the tea, not let cut down the tea, he wouldn't waste the time. And he drank his tea and he got up anyway, and the next thing he got a kick in the arse and he was driven about 10 foot up into the air and he came down his arse and he turned around, there was no one behind him.
Did he got a kick in the arse from who?
No one knows.
So what happened then?
I said, that's the last sport he knocked. That's the last sport he knocked. There's a lot of folklore about trees and forts and all that. There was the one up the country which I knew the people, and there was a big white thorn tree in the middle of the field. And the fairy tree in Tara is a white thorn tree.
Uh-huh.
And do you know that? But he said to this woman's father, I'm going to knock that tree. And the man said, don't touch that tree. He knocked the tree anyway. He lost 16 cattle in a year. His mother died in a year. And he gave 3 months aside from hospital in Dublin as well himself.
And there's no kind of undoing it then, like once it's done, it's done?
No, there's no undoing. But I mean, those things should be left there. Those things shouldn't be touched. Why should they be touched?
And were those trees there, those hawthorns, they're hawthorns, aren't they? Were they planted or were they actually just there?
No, I'd say I don't know whether my grandfather planted them or not, but I know I'd say he didn't touch them anyway, or I didn't touch them either.
It's funny that there's a line, it's like they're part of a ditch, but...
Yeah, but it's going heading down, right down to the middle of the fort. Like.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But like, I planted more trees by the ditch behind there where there was nothing. Like that when Jerry gave me this dress. In fact, my grandfather wanted to give it to my father, and he wouldn't take it when he got married because he said there were too many under him, you know.
And there's a lot of Leens in this area, isn't there?
To the Orleans. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right.